All right, y'all. Thank you for coming today. Welcome to Asmbly. We are Asmbly Makerspace, and we are Austin's largest nonprofit makerspace. And we are here today to give you a demo day here in the laser room. And we'll be doing a combination of showing you a little bit of sublimation printing and then using Print Plus Cut, which is a Lightburn software feature. All right. So sublimation is something that we do in our textiles room here, and we have our Sawgrass sublimation printer in there, and we'll be able to go check that out on the tour afterwards. But we also have the Sawgrass Print Manager, which is the software that we use to print to the printer. So we'll double click on this to make sure it's open. And then down here, it'll say application is running. Once you see that, we'll click here and click the little Print Manager tab. And from there, we can open local file. So I'm going to grab some of the designs that we've chosen today and hit open. Here is the main page that you'll want to edit. So your substrate, depending on what material you're going to put it on, I chose MDF board because we used wood. And then source, tray 1 or bypass tray, we used a large piece of paper going through the bypass tray. It was 11 by 17, so I'm going to choose that. The print manager automatically mirrors the image because when you press it, if you don't mirror it when you print it, it will be backwards. So here you can mess with the layout. We have 11 by 17 on here. It's giving us a preview. And then I can go over to jobs and add another one. So if I also want to show the flag that we're going to be using today, I can, and then I can edit the size. And once I'm done here, I can go ahead and hit print. So once that prints, the process works where it prints with our sublimation printer on this special sublimation paper. And this process, you take the paper and you print and you take it over to the heat press. Our active heat press is located also in the textiles room. We've got our print, so it'll look like this when it comes out. It was 11 by 17, but I cut it down. We have an example of the sublimation paper that we use. And then this is what a full sheet would look like printed with the design that I just chose. Awesome. So for this purpose, what we would do is come over here to the heat press. You would choose your desired temperature and pressure and time settings based on your material. And then what you would do is have your piece of wood in here. You're going to place this down. You're going to press it for desired time and then pull it out and you'll have your press. So we've already done this on our wood with all of our designs. I have the flag on this side of this one. And we actually have our Asmbly A over in the laser already with our saw blade. So this is Dorian, one of our large lasers here at Asmbly. And we have currently our image of our Asmbly A and our saw blade that have already been sublimation printed onto the wood laying on the bed. I'm going to go ahead and turn the machine on. And I'm going to hold off on turning the chiller on until we actually cut, just for audio, because it gets a little bit loud in here. So this is what our setup looks like right now. Notice I'm using clamps on the wood. This might be necessary if you're using sublimation printing onto wood or acrylic because it can warp your material with the heat. So we have that secured there. And then we can go over here to our screen and talk a little bit more about the print plus cut process. So basically, print plus cut is used to allow you to add registration marks to any design. So you can add 2 registration marks, and as long as you have a vector of the outline of what you want, you're able to cut it out perfectly. This can be used for several different things, but what we're doing here today and what to show you is a really great use design-wise is allowing you to sublimation print something onto a material and then go ahead and cut it out on the laser. So what we'll do now is walk you through a little bit of the process of print plus cut on Lightburn. I'm zooming in here. I have vectors ready. There's a couple of options you can use. For example, with the Asmbly A, we already had our vector file there. This saw blade, I actually used image trace on Lightburn, so that's a good way to do it too. And then with our flag cutout, we actually had Michael hand design this outline because we weren't able to grab a quick trace from that. So there are several different ways in which you can attain your vector. And those are some of the ways that we used. So first we're going to show you on the saw blade. And what we're going to do is first notice that we've added registration marks. So you need something that has an intersecting point. The easiest to do is a quick X like this. And just making sure that once you design that in your file that you group those two together so it recognizes it as a connection point rather than two individual points. And then you want to pick two places on either side of your design to place those. And you want to choose the edge or a little bit outside the edge if you're worried about your registration mark showing on your print. So here we've got this left edge over here. We zoom in on the right and we also have a registration mark here. And what we've done is we've gone in and actually sublimation printed the same registration mark onto our design. So on the saw blade over here, we have our registration marks. They're very small, but they are one over here on the very same point that we have it in our Lightburn file, and then same over here. And now what we'll do is go ahead and get the remote for the laser. We already have it focused and we don't need to worry about the basic laser setup, but I'm going to jog it over. And what we're going to do is we're going to find that first point, the first registration mark on our design over here. So I'm going to slowly jog over there. And what you're looking for is you want your red dot from the laser to be directly over that registration mark that you've created. And for the sake of today, I am going to use the remote and the slow move function to get to that point. But if you were to want to really get in there and get really precise, you are able to actually come over here on Lightburn and jog at very, very small increments if you want to get it very precise. You'll see that we still get a really nice result just using the hand jog and eyeball method. And I think that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is scroll up and zoom in on our first registration mark that we've just jogged over on the laser and select that. And now we can open Print plus Cut on Lightburn. So we'll go into Laser Tool, and then we'll go into Print plus Cut and hit Start Wizard. So we've already selected our first registration mark, so we can go ahead and hit Set First Target Position. Now I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to notice my mark up here, and I'm going to jog the laser head over to that next registration mark on the physical piece of wood. So I'm doing the same thing here where I'm basically just placing that red dot right over that registration mark. And when I think it looks good, which I think it does, I'll go back over here, select that point on Lightburn, and then go ahead and hit Set Second Target Position. Now I'm going to choose Align Outputs Scaled. And this is a concept that we'll dive deeper into with our next example, showing that you can actually scale your object automatically. It doesn't have to be the exact same vector size as your print. So now that I have those two registration points set and Print plus Cut set, I'm starting from absolute coordinates, and I'm going to go ahead and select everything here. So what I've done with my registration marks is I've actually set them to a different layer and set that output to off. So it helps actually grab that registration point for Print plus Cut. But when I go in, it's not actually going to laser fire those X's onto my design. So now that I have all of this selected, I'm going to go ahead and frame and just make sure that it looks like it's going to go where it's supposed to. So we should see the laser head following the outline of our cut. That looks really nice. And now what we'll be able to do is go ahead and close the lid. Now we'll turn our chiller on. The laser won't fire without that. So we've got that on now. I'll give that a second to boot up. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and hit Start. So I'll click here to look at the preview. It shows exactly what it's going to cut out. It's not showing cutting the registration marks because I don't have those selected. And it says total time estimated about 45 seconds. I'll hit OK. I feel like the chiller has had enough time to boot up, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Start. Now we'll see the laser cutting out our design. And this first design that we chose is really to kind of show that it doesn't have to be a smooth, flat outline. You can get some really nice detail here with any sort of outer shape. So as we watch the laser cut, we can notice that it's going all the way around those saw blade areas and cutting out really nicely as we've set our registration marks. All right, and it's finishing up now. So I'm going to go ahead and jog the laser head back. Give it a second to clear. And now I can lift this up and show you guys that we actually have our cutout now. So I'll take those magnets off and we have our first cut. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, we did a pretty decent job of getting the cutout and also not having too much wood showing around the edges. The idea is that you're able to cut something out and have it really be a perfect, precise cut. So that was our first cut. I would call that one pretty successful. Keep in mind that after this, I'll be able to take any questions you have specifically about Print Plus Cut demo. And then afterwards, any questions you have generally about assembly or lasers or sublimation, etc. This is something where we actually have classes for both subject areas. So we have classes for sublimation printing and we also have classes for lasers. In order to do something like this on our lasers here, you would be required to take our big lasers class, and then you would be able to explore on both Dorian and Tark in our big lasers. And then sublimation is a pretty quick and easy class. I don't believe you're required to take that one, but it is very useful, and you can get a lot of good tips and tricks about different materials to use, settings, and techniques, etc. All right, so now what we're going to do is go back into Lightburn, and you see we still have our cut selected and we have Print Plus Cut activated on that design. So I'm going to go back into Laser Tools, Print Plus Cut, and Start Wizard. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Reset, Print, and Cut, and then Close. So that reset everything. It's not registering these registration marks anymore. And we can go ahead and move on to our next design. I'm going to go ahead and set this one to an output layer that is turned off. And we'll go ahead and move into our Assembly A design. So I am going to start with this large one. This one is scaled to the exact proportion that we printed it on the wood. And here we've done something a little bit different where we have our registration marks on Lightburn as you need them. But for this piece of wood, we actually didn't apply registration marks on the sublimation print because this outline is so smooth and clear, and we have a very good idea of where exactly those registration points would be because of those clean edges. So I'm going to go ahead and place this here. Notice I'm going to use magnets again because the wood is warped since we heat pressed it. So I'll place the magnet here. Magnet here. All right, that feels pretty steady. So now what we're going to do is similar to what we did last time. We're going to go ahead and jog to that first registration mark. So as you see on the design up here, we have it in this top left corner. So that's where I'm going to jog the laser to over here on the design. And I'm going to do the same thing and take a close look and just make sure it looks like it is on that outer edge. That looks pretty nice. So we're going to hold that there. We're going to go ahead and zoom in here and select that registration mark. And now we'll go back into Laser Tools, Print Plus Cut, and we'll start the wizard again. So we have this first registration mark selected, so we'll hit Set First Target Position. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to this next target position. And instead of me physically jogging, I'm going to go ahead and hit jog to selection, and you should see the laser actually move over to that place. And you'll see this is actually pretty spot on because what we've done is size the image exactly the same to the vector. And that's really nice, but imagine that you don't have that. So we're going to go ahead and hit reset. Imagine we don't have it sized the same way. So we're going to go ahead and here. And we're going to go back to our first point and show you scaling. That looks pretty good. And we'll go ahead and select this registration mark here. Go into Laser Tools, Print and Cut, and Start Wizard. We'll go ahead and hit Set First Target Position. Now I'm going to go down here and select this next one, our second target position, but you'll notice it's only going to jog part of the way because this is sized down on our vector. But I'm able to actually just continue jogging over manually until I get to that point. And now I'll go ahead and say set second target position. And now we have an option, align outputs scaled or align outputs no scaling. We're going to align outputs scaled, and it should scale everything to what we want. So now in order to check that, I'm going to go ahead and select this vector, and I'm going to hit frame. So now we should see it going around the outer boundary of the assembly A. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and shut the lid. And we can go ahead and hit start. So for this one, when we go to preview, before we hit start, we'll notice the total time estimated for this is 3 minutes and 29 seconds. So it's a little bit longer of a cut, and that is because we're cutting out the interiors here as well. You saw one cutout of the interior with the saw blade, but this kind of gives you a better idea of the detail it can get both on the outer boundary, but also on the inside. So we'll hit OK and start. And we should see it cutting. So this looks really nice. It's going ahead and starting with the inner squares. And while this one's cutting out, I'm going to kind of talk to you about some of the benefits of Print Plus Cut. So we talked about some of the design benefits, being able to sublimate onto different materials. And you're not bound by wood here. You can do textiles as well. You get a really nice, bright sublimation print on things like polyester and nylon. And with different materials, you're going to get different effects. So we have some examples set out on the table over here and out in the multi-purpose room. So you guys can see some examples. We have some items that would be Print Plus Cut, and we have some items that are just good examples of sublimation as well. One of the other main functions of using Print Plus Cut, which is actually more functional than design purpose, is really, really nice, especially if you're familiar with working with lasers. And that is that if you are cutting out your project and something doesn't necessarily cut all the way through, then you can actually go back, set registration marks, even if you haven't saved your origin or haven't saved anything else. You can go back and set registration marks and actually recut out your design. So this is really useful. Imagine if you're working on a piece that has a lot of intricate cuts and most of it got cut out, but one corner didn't for some reason. So that's a really nice way to not lose that project and kind of save it with being able to go back and cut in the exact place that you want without the same placement on the laser bed. So we'll see now it's making the last of the interior cutouts, and it will cut out the outside after this. I think this is a really nice example for Print Plus Cut because it shows some sublimation, although just one color, pretty vibrant on the wood. And you can actually get a more vibrant finish if you used finished wood or laminated wood, for example. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with sublimation that's really exciting. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with lasers that's really exciting. But this is a really great way to combine the two shop areas. And that's something that we really like to promote here at Asmbly is how transferable these skills are across shop areas and how you're able to combine them. So for example, we have sublimation, textiles, and lasers. You could also combine woodworking and lasers or woodworking and electronics. We have a lot of different areas for cross-shop opportunity and collaboration. And that brings a lot of fun projects, but also a lot of really fun community events like this and just good conversation and makerspace fun. Awesome. So we see now that it is cutting the outer line and it is almost done, and we'll be able to take it out and pass it around so you guys can see exactly how this works. So Asmbly is open 7 days a week. We are open 21 hours a day. So we really try to make this space really accessible, especially for, all different schedules, work hours, things like that. And we also try to do events like this pretty often so that we can provide opportunity for the community to come together and knowledge share. So this cut is done. We can go ahead and lift the laser up. I'm going to go ahead and jog the laser beam back. And we should be able to pull this off. And we have a really nice cutout. So not only do we have this nice cutout here, the Asmbly A, we're also left with an interesting interior. So this is another good thing to think about. With laser cutting generally, but also using Print Plus Cut, there's often opportunity to create 2 projects out of 1 cut. All right, so this is the cutout that we have. We have our Asmbly A. This came out really nicely. So that was sublimation printed, heat pressed onto wood, Baltic birch, and then laser cut on Dorian, one of our large lasers. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this out. We have another sample that was done in practice so that we can show the people in the NPR room. All right. So that was a really fun example because we got to show you guys scaling. For the next example, we're going to show you something a little bit different. And this is just showing that you don't necessarily have to have your material placed in a certain position or even upright. It could be upside down. It could be turned around. You can have really wonky positioning with your wood and still get a really nice cut on this. So here, I'm going to go ahead and set that to an output layer that is turned off since we cut that already. I'm going to go back into Print Plus Cut and I'm going to reset it like we did earlier. And now we'll be able to work with our last example, which is a flag cutout. So this is the vector that Michael so nicely made for us. And like I showed you earlier, we have our American flag. And so now we have the vector and we're going to go ahead and cut that out. So you see on this one, we do have our registration mark. This is also probably one where we would be able to get away without it. But just because we're focusing on showing you not necessarily that skill on this one, we put them on there and we'll go ahead and show you how you can place it really anywhere in the laser bed in any position and still get a really nice cut. So yes, like I said, we're going to go ahead and rotate it in a different way. So right here, we see that once the camera focuses, we'll see that this is actually kind of diagonally shifted. It's not sitting upright or anything like that. And really, we're able to do this because as long as we set those registration marks properly, and as long as we correlate them to the registration marks on Lightburn, we will still get a really nice cutout. All right. So now what we're going to do, we have this zoomed in. I do have my registration marks already up here. So we see on our vector here, we've got the top left of the flag with our vector, and then we also have the bottom right corner with our registration marks made of vectors. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and select that first one, and we're going to go ahead and jog over to where that would be on our design. And I'm also going to do a quick refocus just because this is 1/4 inch wood and the last was 1/8 inch. All right, that looks really nice. So now I'm able to come over here and do that same thing as we did earlier, where we're going to make sure that red dot is over our registration mark. so that it cuts out in the right place. And I think that looks really nice. We have it selected over here on our Lightburn screen. So I'm going to go ahead back into Laser Tools, Print and Cut, Start Wizard, and set first target position. So now I'm going to scroll out here and I'm going to go scroll back in and find that second target position. I'm going to select that. I'm going to go ahead and jog over on our design. All right. I think that looks really nice. And remember, if you're wanting even more precision, you can always come over here and adjust distance and move manually right here. But for today's purposes, I think that looks really nice. And we're going to go ahead and hit set second target position. Align output scaled. And now what we're going to do is go back and select this and just go ahead and frame and make sure it went in the right place. So when you're using Print Plus Cut, especially when you're first starting out, there are definitely mistakes to be made. So it's really great that you can frame it and make sure it's in the right spot. And this looks like it is. So it is going around our flag just as we want it to. And if it were off, it might be framing somewhere over here or over here, and we would know to go ahead and reset. And typically if something like that happens, once I've set my Print Plus Cut, I'll just go back into the wizard and reset everything just to make sure I get a clean start. So now what we're going to do is pull the lid down. We're going to go ahead and look at our preview and just see how long this one will take. Looks like 44 seconds for this cut. I'll hit OK. And I've already got my settings for 1/4 inch ready. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And now we'll see the laser go around the flag cutout and cut it out pretty much perfectly. I think that sublimation is a really nice addition to lasers and combination because you can get real vibrancy and color. And oftentimes with laser cutting, if you want to do that, you either have to work with an already colored material like acrylic. But if you're working with wood, that often requires paint or something like a pre-finish or a post-finish process. And sublimation is really nice and easy. And you can also get really nice detail. We have an example out in the multi-purpose room. It's a photo of me. That's just kind of stickered out, and then you'd be able to make a vector cut around that. So you could cut out, you could heat press a photo of loved ones, cut that out, make it perfect. You can get really creative with this. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this up. Our cut is done. I'll be able to jog the laser away. And now we'll be able to see our flag cutout. So here's our flag cutout. This is what it looks like. And this is kind of the final project for this demo day today. So what we've been able to do today is walk you through a little bit and hopefully pique your interest for both laser cutting and sublimation, but also some of the interesting software tools that we can use like Lightburn, Print Plus Cut. So I encourage everybody to take these classes if they're interested and stay afterwards for a tour. We're happy to show everybody around. And we also have sign-up sheets if you're interested in either sublimation class, laser class, or we also have a sign-up sheet if you're interested in a more in-depth workshop for Print Plus Cut. We're happy to do that with you. Asmbly is a very collaborative space, and we're always willing to educate each other and learn from each other. And we really encourage knowledge sharing here. So I really appreciate everybody that's come out today, everybody watching online. Thank you so much to Michael for the help and James for the technical support. I think this has gone really well, and I really appreciate all of your time and attention and letting us show you how you can collaborate different areas of the shop. Awesome. Thank you guys. All right, so now I'll be taking some questions. If anybody has questions specific to the Print Plus Cut demo, I'll be happy to answer those. Brian, what's your question? So there is a function in Lightburn, and I'll repeat the question in case it wasn't caught on the microphone, which was, if you want somewhat of a border around your cut, is that possible and how do you do that? And so there is a software function called kerf offset, and that accounts for the width of the laser beam. And so you can offset it to a certain degree and actually get more space. But what I would probably choose to do is use a design method where I actually design it for that border to already be offset and then make that process a little simpler without having to tweak the kerf offset settings. All right, I think you had a question first. Yes, there actually is. So that's something that you can learn in our sublimation class. We go through that in detail, and we also have a heat setting guide posted in the wall of the textiles room. So the question was, is there a certain documentation that details every setting you might need for different materials for sublimation? And the answer is yes, we have that documented for our class and go over that there. But we also have it posted on the textiles wall and online. So for example, if you were to choose polyester, it would have a recommended heat setting, recommended time setting, and then recommended pressure setting as well. So those are the main three things that you adjust with the heat press. And then based on your design in the software, you can choose what material you're using. Awesome. And Valerie actually went and grabbed it for us. So we have our heat press guide here. That's posted in the textiles room. And that gives you, time, temperature, and pressure for different surface materials. Another great example. Thank you, Valerie, for bringing this. So we have another example of what it might look like if you were to try to do sublimation printing without going through the Sawgrass Sublimation Print Manager. So this is without, and you'll notice a couple of things here. So you'll notice that the vibrancy is much less. And I'll go ahead and hold this one up as well so you can kind of compare side to side. Yeah, Valerie, if you don't mind helping hold that up. We can tell that the vibrancy is way different. And this is actually a material that will sublimate really well and vibrantly when used properly. So that's what this one on the right looks like. And then over here on the left, it is not using that print manager. The other thing you'll notice is when you go through the sublimation process without using the print manager, it doesn't automatically mirror your image. So you see in this one over here, our Amplify Austin Day sign is correct. Over here, it's actually flipped, and so all the text is backwards. So that's another important part of it, and that's another thing that that print manager covers for us. So if you're going to do sublimation printing, you really want to do it through that print manager. And we have that installed on multiple computers in our textiles room so everybody can use it. And it's actually something you can install on your own laptop for no fee as well. Awesome. And you had a question? A lead-in? Oh, interesting. And then cut with a lead-in. Yeah, so the question was, can you cut with a lead-in so it makes a really nice clean cut rather than having that potential for a first point of the laser firing and having a little bit more than what you want cut there? And I think that's a great question. That's something that we'll go over in our laser class as well. It is definitely possible, and there's a couple different techniques to do that. Yeah, exactly. With fabric, it can be tricky because as you cut it, the air assist will actually sometimes blow the fabric up. So it's important to make sure that you have it secured in different areas. Even if it's not warping or anything weird like wood would do, it will, fly up and move around. So keep those things in mind. Yeah, magnets are great for that. That's what I was using over here for the wood. We have these magnets here that were 3D printed for us. We love using our tools to make other tools to use. Yeah, you can use magnets. I've seen for really thin materials like cardstock or thin fabric, sometimes people use tape, things like that. But as long as your clamp or magnet or tape or anything like that doesn't get in the way of the laser head, you should be good. Do we have any other questions?
Earlier, whether you registration.
So the main thing with the registration marks is that you need a point of intersection. So you need a center point, and the easiest way to find that is with an X. So I would recommend using an X, yes. And the way I did that was I just drew 2 vector lines, centered them, grouped them so it's one connected joint, and then it's able to find that center point. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming today. We really appreciate it, and we're happy for everyone to stick around, have some coffee and snacks, and we'll give a tour to anybody interested.